All right. So, hi, good evening. We're back for our fifth and final class of the Rabbi's Winter Seminar 2023 on Jews in Search of God. And this is going to be about God and the Kabbalah, so that's kind of exciting. And we were just talking before we started recording about Michael Moser, one of our students who's made a video, a music video. He put some images of his own videos and images to music, and it's very evocative of a kind of his theology. So that'll be in the chat, and if you're watching the recording, you want to get it later, we can send that on to you. Okay, thanks, Michael. And
yeah, I just put it in.
Okay, and it was reminding me as we were talking about God kind of hiding in plain sight, or God so easy to find. Is God, we're not so easy to find. It reminds me, actually, there's a Hasidic story like this of a little boy who was a future Rebbe, and the children were playing hide and seek, and then the other children forgot to look for him. They got busy with another game, and they sort of left him alone, and he started crying because the other kids forgot to look at him, and he went to his Zaidi, the grandpa, and said, well, they're not looking for me anymore. I'm so sad. And Zadie is kind of like, well, that's kind of how God feels, that God wants us to look for God, and yet sometimes we're just busy doing other things. And maybe in this class we've gotten a little bit of the start of kind of our looking for God. I'm just curious if anybody has cracked open that like personal theology page and looked at it, or started to make maybe just journal or something about your own theology, or even think of your own theology since starting this class. Anybody?
Well, I started a book, a notebook years ago, my theology, and every once in a while, like recently, I went back to look at it, and I said, well, I agree with myself.
Okay. Well, I like to,
And if I can add.
Okay. No, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, well, I guess people know I'm a writer, and this is a book of mine.
Yeah, that's a great one.
That is the last part of it is pretty much Kabbalah.
And it's poetry. His poetry.
I'm a poet, and so I've been reading Kabbalah for 40 years. Not quite 40 years, long time reading and studying it. So it's really internal to me, what I know.
Well, you can, if you want, obviously jump in. Anyone who wants to share something you've already learned about. I mean, obviously it's a massive subject. It's very deep, and we just have an hour and a half, and we're just, I thought today we would try to at least look at three main topics. One is Ein Sof, the idea of the boundlessness of God. And the other is the Sfirot, to explain what is this diagram of the Sfirot, what are these? And then a little, at least, to touch on the Tikkun Olam idea, the Shvirat HaKelim, breaking of the vessels, because if you came to the Elul class, we already did learn about that, but hopefully, if we have time, we'll get into that a little too. I was going to say, I also keep I keep different journals, and I try to keep one. I wouldn't say it's theology, but it's kind of spiritual experiences. And, because as Reb Zalman, my teacher, pointed out, we all have these experiences, but then sometimes it's just like water. You don't have a vessel for it. It's come and gone. It's so fat. And at least if you write it down, as another one of my teachers said, it's kind of like putting it in your bank account, your spiritual bank account. When you're feeling a little dry, or you're feeling a little lost, you can come back to those memories, and it helps you to nurture them. So as you know, I like to start with them. Well, first of all, we found out, if you missed the last class or two, oh boy. Okay. What I found out is, I don't know, I got to get out of my,
Uh-oh.
Okay, hold on. Can you see the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't see anything.
Uh-oh. Okay, then I don't know, Tom.
Maybe I need.
Let's take a vote. Can other people see it?
No, I see it.
Okay. So I found that if I just maximize it and do it as a slideshow, that's when Zoom kicks me off for some reason. So we're just going to look at it like this, even though it's not the best view, but it'll, I think, have less problems. I think last time I only got kicked off once. Okay, actually, I should, by the way, I should designate someone as a co-host, because if I get kicked off, I have to have someone here as the host, even if you don't do anything. So
I don't mind being a co-host. The only problem is I think our cable is okay now.
Okay, well,
There was
maybe
something that was-
George, would you mind being the co-host?
No. Do I
Okay,
get a lesson plan?
yeah. No. Okay. So
What
let's
does
just
it
start with,
require? I mean, you know, I'm no Zoom expert,
Yeah.
but if you, I mean, if you
okay.
need help, I can help.
All right, well, we'll come back to that in a minute because I can't do it right now anyway. All right,
Okay.
so I like to start with a little nigun, a little melody, and this is a melody that's supposed to go back to the Baal Shem Tov. I learned it from Reb Zalman, and it does go with a mystical prayer, Ana B'choach, but I'm just going to do it as a melody, as a wordless nigun, to kind of get us in the mood of learning Kabbalah, because I think we have to do it as the sages and the Kabbalists would say, B'tchilu urchimu, with a certain awe and trembling, to enter into learning these subjects, even if we're doing it in a quasi-academic way. So here's the melody if you want to sort of join in with me. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Just a little more. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Da 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 da. La la la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. And the blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Holy One of blessing, your presence fills creation. You made us holy with your mitzvot, and you bid us to engage with words of Torah. So just by way of review, this is our 5th class, and in each class we looked at God, and Jews search for God and theology in a different historical period. You know, first in ancient Israel, in the biblical period, we saw 2 names for God. There are more than 2 names, but the 2 main names, Yud-He Vav-He, or Yud-He Vav-He, which is we're calling Yah or Adonai, and Elohim. So we learned that those had different origins to them, and eventually the Yud-He Vav-He name in rabbinic times becomes forbidden to pronounce. We saw that God in the Bible was approached more as an encounter, not as a theology, and that there are many different views of God in the Bible. In rabbinic literature, we saw God becoming, in some cases, a more anthropomorphic figure, a gentle, caring, concerned God who's very close to us. We saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One of Blessing, and the emergence of feminine figures like the Shekhinah and Ruach HaKodesh beginning to come forward. And we saw that those names of Yud-He Vav-He and Elohim have new meanings. Yud-He Vav-He now means more of the merciful qualities of God, and Elohim more of the judgmental qualities of God. And the 3rd week, we were learning about the Jewish views of the goddess, how, as we saw in our book on the Hebrew goddess, that ancient Israelites did worship goddesses, perhaps along with worshiping Yud-He Vav-He, and it was often the household gods, the women worshipped. And it sort of got, you know, in various religious purifications, revivals, it was pushed down, it was pushed aside, but to come out again in the Kabbalah, as we'll see. And then last week, we looked at the rationalist approach to God with Philo of Alexandria and Maimonides, who were trying to give us a more systematic theology of God, and one with would concord with Hellenistic thought and with Greek philosophy. And that this whole idea of, having a theology and having a credo wasn't necessarily originally a Jewish idea. It's more common in Christianity, but maybe we can create our own kind of credo. So if you want to learn more about any of these earlier topics, you can go to their YouTube playlist for this class on the Seaside Jewish Community channel. And we also touched on the idea that there are, in modern times, according to Rabbi Neil Gilman, 3 main types of modern believers. The rationalists, which I classify as God just makes sense. God needs to make sense to me for me to believe in God. The empiricist, the person that comes from experience, I just sense God. That person is often a mystic who has firsthand experiences of the divine. And then the religious existentialist, we won't get to that so much in this class, but hopefully in the future. My life just makes sense because of God. In all the difficulties of life, somehow I find the meaning because of whatever I want to call God. And we noted in the little box on the left that not everyone is a believer, and some are agnostic or atheists, but sometimes our beliefs change. They should change over the course of a lifetime, and sometimes they change more rapidly. Okay, so today we're going to get into Kabbalah. But let me share some things. I want to make sure that we do have time to go into breakout rooms today, because sometimes we missed it. And so I'll try to have it before like the 8 o'clock hour, that we'll break out into breakout rooms and make them big enough so that you have enough people to talk to. All right. So really, what is mysticism? Kabbalah is this received tradition of mysticism, but what is mysticism? Well, anyway, I'd like to start by asking you if you have a definition of mysticism. You can write it in the chat. I think mysticism is an empirical kind of theology, one that comes first from our experience, and then it could get a whole big complicated belief system to go with it. But anybody either want to speak out or write in the chat, what do you think a mystic is? And you could answer, do you think you are a mystic? A little bit. Mysticism is the direct experience of God.
Yes, but God as concretely present.
So it's not, this contemplating what is God, or explaining the argument from design, or an argument, different kinds of arguments to try to prove that there's a God, but you have an experience. That's what Reb Zalman said. And then the theology is the afterthought after the experience.
Am I remembering right? Is it in Ezekiel? Is it the first experience? I think described in Ezekiel as the experience of seeing experiencing the throne of the chariot of God.
We're going to see that. And Isaiah sees God on the throne.
Yeah.
So a direct experience, the theophany, right? Anybody else? Let's see what else we have. Okay, Deborah, having an experience of unifying with God. That's something thank you. Mystics often seek that. They seek this sense of unity of consciousness. And we saw, if you take Jeffrey's class, here's a plug on the Haftarot, you'll see that our prophets were not always so eager to be prophets. Sometimes even Moses was like, who, me? I'm not a talker, I can't do this. Or Isaiah's like, I have unclean lips. And God had to say, you can do it. But for mystics, they would often seek the experience. They would try to have those experiences of experiencing God or unifying with God even. Although I would say, Deborah, that in Judaism, that's often, even though maybe all mystics want that a little, in Judaism, it's never the ultimate goal to have that unified consciousness, but it's always to have it and then come back, come down the mountain like Moses came down Sinai, and to do something in the world, right? So even when we say, even one thing I learned as a mystical exercise in a Jewish vein is when you say the Shema, the first line, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, or Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. To really go deep inside and focus on unifying with God, shutting out everything else and just being at one with God. And then for Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed, blessed is God's glorious kingdom, which is the Shekhinah, you'll see today, the world out there forever and ever, to open your eyes and look around and connect and try to bring the energy of the unification out into the world. And that's a very easy mystical meditation that everybody could do. Just if you do it a few thousand times, you'll see. Even if you just start doing it one time, you'll see. Okay, any other thoughts of mysticism? You can keep putting them there if you want to. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner, has anyone read books of Rabbi Lawrence Kushner? He's an American, okay, to sense the presence of God in the world. Thank you. Yeah, yes, I think. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner wrote, a mystic is anyone who has the gnawing suspicion that the apparent discord, brokenness, contradictions, and discontinuities that assault us every day might conceal a hidden unity. I'll read that again. A mystic is anyone who has the gnawing suspicion that the apparent discord, brokenness, contradictions, and discontinuities that assault us every day might conceal a hidden unity. Because, of course, Kabbalah and mysticism are all about the sod, the hidden tradition. And I'm giving the quote from Rabbi Kushner, who's written a lot of wonderful and very readable books. He was interviewed by Krista Tippett on Being. Does anybody listen to On Being? It's a wonderful podcast. Yeah. And I'm going to put in a link to the whole interview because I think you might enjoy reading it. Oh. All right, just a moment. It might take me a minute to get that into the chat. Okay. I am learning patience. I have a prayer. I say, Hashem, grant me patience and give it to me now. That's my favorite prayer. All right. So this is, if you want to listen to somebody really articulate talk about Kabbalah, you can listen to Lawrence Kushner. So we have some other thing. What I have in mind, Deborah, was the traditional Hasidic chanting and dancing to achieve a sense of an altered state, an active meditative state. Definitely. I mean, that's what mystics want, to have a spiritual experience to get, and it could, and Hasidism brought Kabbalah. Hasidism, which is a spiritual movement that arose about 300 years ago in Eastern Europe, and it still continues today in forms that have become very, very, very Orthodox, but also in modernized forms in Jewish renewal. People that do chanting, like our chanted meditation group every Wednesday, right? Or people that do dancing for bringing, we get together, you're learning and you're drinking a little l'chaim, stories, anything that shifts you out of your ordinary consciousness could bring you to a greater sense of unity. All right, so Kabbalah, if you read the chapter here in Finding God, you got a little basic intro to Kabbalah, but just to review, Kabbalah in Hebrew is receiving. It's a received tradition. And it's not just one book, it's a whole tradition that was an oral tradition, like so much of Judaism. The Talmud, the Midrash was originally oral and spoken, and later on is recorded in all these different books. It's a hidden tradition that was there from the start. Spirituality is there from the start. In our first class, we saw texts about Moses at the burning bush. God speaks to him from a burning bush. He takes off his feet to feel the sanctity of the place. He has a direct experience of the divine. That's a mystical experience, right? So it's right there from the start. But these experiences, and some of them become a little more elaborate in later books of the Bible. We will shortly look at one of those. At first, this mystical tradition, though, as it developed, and the people who were more mystical began to seek it out, especially in the first centuries of the Common Era, it was only shared with the elite, with the adepts, even one-on-one. And it was almost like, when you go in a store, it's like, if you have to ask the price, it's not for you. It's kind of like you had to already almost know it intuitively before they would teach it to you. Okay. But as I said, over time, it got shared more broadly. It really became part of Judaism, and some have called it even the theology of Judaism. In many ways, our practices are full of Kabbalah that we don't even know about. For example, when we do Lecha Dodi on Friday night, and we sing Welcome the Shabbat Queen, the Shabbat Bride, this is something straight from Kabbalah, welcoming the Shekhinah, Malchut, to come in and be reunited with the more transcendent aspect of God and the masculine aspect of God. Okay, and as I said, with Hasidism, it became very popularized. One thing I disagreed with in the book, because I have to disagree a little bit, is that if you look on page 69, 67 at the bottom, okay, by the way, while I'm thinking of it, I'm just going to make George, I'm just going to make you the host. You don't really have to do any duties. I'm just doing it in case I get kicked off that there'll be a host, okay? We won't give you any work to do. All right, so would somebody like to read at the bottom? This is actually not from any mystical text. Well, it's from the Talmud, Tractate Hagigah, and that is actually a very mystical tractate. That's why I like it. It has a lot of really mystical stuff in it. And this is one of the most well-known stories, which is also on that little Kabbalah 101 page in a fuller form. But would somebody like to read this? I guess raise your hand electronically because I can't see without my glasses. Anyone want to read it? Got it handy? Elsa, do you want to read it?
Yeah, I got it. 4 persons entered the Pardes.
Pardes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, orchard, that is field of mysticism. Ben Azai cast a look and died. Ben Zoma looked and became demented. Achar, another name given to Elisha ben Avuya, cut down the plants, that is, became estranged from Judaism. Rabbi Akiva alone departed unhurt.
Okay, that's a simplified version of the fuller text, which is on the Kabbalah 101 link that I gave you, and we'll see in a minute. But basically, this is 4 great sages went to the Pardes. Now, Pardes is like an orchard. And you hear it sounds like paradise, right? It's from a Persian loan word. In Jewish tradition, it became associated as an acronym. The letters of the word Pardes stood for the different kinds of interpretation, from the simple, the allusion, the midrash, and the secret, so the esoteric. But in this case, when it said they went into the Pardes, it seems to be saying that they went and experienced the mysteries. They went into the deepest secrets of Torah, and it didn't work out so well for everybody because one of them just expired. He gave up his soul, maybe in his desire to unify with God. Another kind of lost his senses, and another Acher, we call him Acher, the other guy, Elisha ben Abuya, became an apostate, a heretic, and his story has been recorded in there's a great Jewish work of fiction. It's an old book, it's kind of dated, but it's called A Driven Leaf, like a driven leaf. Somebody would look it up and put it in there in the chat. It's about Elisha ben Abuya. And the only one who came out whole from the experience was Rabbi Akiva, who is a great, he was a sage who started out as a simple shepherd. His wife encouraged him to learn, his wife Rachel, and he became this great sage, and he became a leader in the rebellion against the Roman Empire, which was an ill-fated rebellion. But he came out okay. Some interpret that because of the grounding influence of his wife, who helped him bring it back down the mountain without, losing it on the way. But he was definitely among those seeking the mysteries of the Torah. Now, what I disagree with here is that this leads our authors to the conclusion that the rabbis were not supportive of people doing mystical speculation. It says that it was dangerous, and they painted a grim scenario for those who dared to engage in mystical pursuits. Okay. I didn't totally agree with that because yes, I think they were just giving a warning And the warning is that if you go about this, take great care, because it could be disastrous. Getting involved with mysticism is like, getting involved in anything that expands your consciousness too much. You're leaving the consensual reality, and who knows if you're going to come back whole. But some in other places in this tractate, in fact, on page 14b, which I think is like same page for the okay. There's another story in which it turns out great. Somebody wants to study Kabbalah and the whole universe is thrilled. So let me read you a little bit of that. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai got down from his donkey to listen to his student teach the mysteries of creation. And Rabbi Elazar said, "Why did you get down from your donkey? We were just traveling along together." Rabbi Yochanan said, "Well, how could I just, if you're going to expound about the design of the divine chariot and the divine presence is with us and the ministering angels are accompanying us, I can't be just riding on a donkey." And immediately the student, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, began to discuss the design of the divine chariot and expounded, and a fire descended from heaven and encircled all the trees in the field, and all the trees began reciting song. And it was a glorious, though, in a good way. It wasn't a forest fire. It was a joyful moment because the right person was studying in the right way. So I don't think that the rabbis were against it. In fact, they had this whole tractate about it, but they urged caution. All right. So let's look at this source sheet and see a mystical experience that was already taking place in the Bible, in the book of Ezekiel. And I hope I got everything here. All right, let's hope it works and I don't get kicked off. Can you see it? Kabbalah 101. Y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay, that I sent you a link to that too. Audrey sent it to you. And it's just got some wonderful texts that are basic texts on Kabbalah, some basic definitions about what is theosophy, what is esoteric, etc. But I want to skip down to this part from the book of Ezekiel. This is actually one of our Haftarahs. Maybe, I don't know if Jeffrey's taught about it, but it took place when the prophet Ezekiel, who was also a priest, a Kohen, was with the exiles in the Babylonian exile, and he had this amazing vision, which it's so mystical. We're supposed to kind of read it and honor it, but sort of be careful about it. And it became the basis of this Merkava mysticism, people that were your day Merkava that would try to achieve this vision of the chariot and become a chariot or ride this chariot to the heights. But originally it's one man's vision. So would anybody like to read this? You're going to have to, this is where I need the assistant, but anyone want to read a little Ezekiel for us? Okay, Ellen, would you read that?
Sure. Ezekiel 1:1 to 28. In the 30th year, on the 5th day of the 4th month, when I was in the community of exiles by the Chebar Canal, the heavens opened and I saw visions of God. On the 5th day of the month, it was the 5th year of the exile of King
Jehoiachin.
What?
Jehoiachin is actually how you say it, but don't worry about it.
The word of the Lord came to the priest Ezekiel, son of Buzi, by the Chebar Canal in the land of the Chaldeans. And the hand of the Lord came upon him there. I looked, and lo, a stormy wind came sweeping out of the north, a huge cloud and flashing fire surrounded by radiance. And in the center of it, in the center of the fire, a gleam as of amber. In the center of it were also the figures of 4 creatures.
Now, as she's reading this, I invite the rest of us to kind of put ourselves there. This isn't just informational. You have to kind of, notice he's going to say it was kind of like this, it was like this, it was like that. It's not exactly, he's trying to describe something incredible. So why don't you start again from verse 4 and we'll all try to somehow picture a little bit of this. Okay.
Let's see.
I looked in low, yeah.
Right, okay.
Okay.
4 creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the figures of human beings. However, each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. The legs of each were fused into a single rigid leg, and the feet of each were like a single calf's hoof. and their sparkle was like the luster of burnished bronze. They had human hands below their wings. The four of them had their faces and their wings on their four sides. Each one's wings touched those of the other. They did not turn when they moved. Each could move in the direction of any of its faces. Okay. Each of them, well, as I said, right.
Yeah, each of them had a human face.
Right. Each of them had a human face at the front. Each of the four had a face of a lion on the right. Each of the four had a face of an ox on the left. And each of the four had an eagle at the back. Such were their faces. As for their wings, they were separated above. Each had two touching those of the others, while the other two covered its body. And each could move in the direction of any of its faces. They went wherever the Spirit impelled them to go without turning when they moved. Such then was the appearance of the creatures. With them was something that looked like burning coals of fire. This fire, suggestive of torches, kept moving about among the creatures. The fire had a radiance, and lightning issued from the fire. Dashing to and fro among the creatures was something that looked like flares.
And by the way, the word for lightning, of course, the word that he used became like the modern Hebrew word for electricity. It was taken from this. Hashmal, yeah. Okay.
As I gazed,
okay, would someone else like to read? Do you want to take turns maybe?
yes, please.
Okay.
I'd love to.
Okay, I have one hand up though. I have Michael.
Okay.
Barbara.
Michael Alushin.
That is Barbara.
Barbara, I thought. Okay.
Sorry. As I gazed
It's
on,
so tiny that I can't see. I'm sorry.
all right. As I gazed on the creatures, I saw one wheel on the ground next to each of the four-faced creatures. As for the appearance and structure of the wheels, they gleamed like beryl. All four had the same form. The appearance and structure of each was as if two wheels cutting through each other. And when they moved, each could move in the direction of any of its four quarters. They did not veer when they moved. Their rims were tall and frightening, for the rims of all four were covered over with eyes. And when the creatures moved forward, the wheels moved at their sides. And when the creatures were borne above the earth, the wheels were borne too. Wherever the Spirit impelled them to go, they went. Wherever the Spirit impelled them, and the wheels were borne alongside them. For the spirit of the creatures was in the wheels. When those moved, these moved. And when those stood still, these stood still. And when those were borne above the earth, the wheels were borne alongside them, for the spirit of the creatures was in the wheels. Above the heads of the creatures was a form, an expanse with an awe-inspiring gleam as of crystal, was spread out above their heads. Under the expanse, each had one pair of wings extended toward those of the others, and each had another pair covering its body. When they moved, I could hear the sound of their wings, like the sound of mighty waters, like the sound of Shaddai, a tumult like the din of an army. When they stood still, they would let their wings droop. From above the expanse over their heads came a sound. When they stood still, they would let their wings droop. Above the expanse over their heads was the semblance of a throne, in appearance like sapphire, and on top, upon the semblance of a throne, there was the semblance of a human form. From what appeared as his loins up, I saw a gleam as of amber, what looked like a fire encased in a frame. And from what appeared as his loins down, I saw what looked like fire. There was a radiance all about him, like the appearance of the bow which shines in the clouds on a day of rain. Such was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. That was the appearance of the semblance of the presence of the Lord. When I beheld it, I flung myself down on my face, and I heard the voice of someone speaking.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just share. Sorry, now I'm getting it. I don't want to go. Everyone has to look at my Google, but let me give you a little article to read because I feel that this is so massive, and I didn't really prepare to talk about the vision of the chariot, but I want to give you an article you could read about it. The Torah. Okay, here we go. This website, the Torah.com, it's an interesting website because it combines like traditional Judaism and an academic perspective. It's not just sort of naive, but it is people that are committed to Judaism and also to understanding things, in a little more maybe academic Spain. Okay. So this is something that is a really powerful vision. It's like, whoa, right? It's so powerful. We honor it, and you're supposed to treat it with a little awe. And it became the basis of some of the early mysticism called the Merkava mysticism. People that tried to have experiences, they were out seeking those experiences. And that's maybe something of what's being spoken of with Akiba and his comrades, trying to go, to approach the divine throne, to go through the divine palaces in the seven heavens, and yet you have to be really careful. You could go crazy doing stuff like that, right? And then in the early centuries of the Common Era, we also have mystics who wanted to understand the mysteries of creation, how the world was created, Maseh Bereshit, and there's a book called Sefer Yetzirah, which is one of the most, I think this is described in our chapter, an important early work of mysticism.
Well, where the Sefi Road come from?
Yeah, and that actually there is a new translation of Sefer Yetzirah by Rabbi Jill Hammer, if you want to look it up. She just came out with a new translation and commentary on Sefer Yetzirah for us. But really, we get into the more famous books of Kabbalah later on in the Middle Ages. And of course, the great one, which is also touched on in your textbook, is in the 13th century in Spain, the Zohar, right? The Zohar, is my friend, Rabbi Laura Duhan Kaplan calls it the big book of Jewish mysticism. It is said to have been written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, a 2nd century sage, around the time of Rabbi, a little bit after Rabbi Akiva, I guess. But scholars such as Gershon Sholem, who Tom was telling us about earlier, that Gershon Sholem was a great 20th century academic who really pioneered the academic study of Kabbalah. And he said it wasn't really written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but by Moshe de Leon, a Spanish Jew in the 13th century, who claimed to have just discovered it, or someone gave it, or he found it, or was given it, but it was actually written by him. And apparently even his wife said, well, he wrote it himself, or maybe he kind of channeled it. We don't, okay. The Zohar is a mystical commentary on the Bible, in which we had already seen with Philo that Philo reinterpreted the Bible as an allegory. This stands for this, and that stands for that. And the Zohar takes that even further. It's really saying that the whole Torah is kind of like the inner biography of God. And I want to give you another link again in the chat, just a moment. Okay, this is for he's not a rabbi, but Professor Daniel Matt. Okay, I'm going to put this, Professor Daniel Matt. He was a professor at Berkeley in California. All right, let me see if that works actually. Yes, it does work. Okay. So Daniel Matt was approached by a wealthy person, one of the Pritzkers, a wealthy Jewish family, who said, I would like to just sponsor you translating the Zohar into English, into modern English, because there was already one edition into English, the Sonsino edition, but they wanted to see a new modernized, really highly researched translation of the Zohar into English. So Professor Matt accepted that challenge, and he just sat for years translating the Zohar with all the earliest manuscripts and so forth. And he got some other people to help. A couple of other people edited a couple of volumes. So I think it's at least 12 volumes now, the whole Zohar. So that, again, another vast compendium of Jewish lore. But the link I gave you is to watch a talk by Professor Daniel Matt. And you can also look for this book. It's called The Zohar, the Pritzker edition. I mean, you can buy it on Amazon. But the problem is it's many, many volumes. So it's I think it's worth listening to Professor Matt explain it, especially if you're not that familiar with it. And I got to take classes with him. I took several of his online classes, which he offers, anybody can take. Oh, you got it. Yeah, Tom is showing us a volume. Okay, kind of hold it still so we can see. We're getting the northern lights are getting on it, but
I can't
there
get,
it
if
is.
I knew how to get out of the northern lights, I would. but
I could tell you, but you don't really want to get out of them. Okay. But anyway, so I actually, to just share like a little personal anecdote, when I was out for our son's wedding out on the West Coast, I had been taking this class with Daniel Matt and making some like resource sheets for some of the students to show where things in the Zohar, he has so many footnotes that tell you where everything comes from in the Talmud, and I made like some source sheets for the other students. So I said, can I come visit you? And I went to visit him, and he showed me like the earliest edition, I think it's the earliest print edition of the Zohar that he has. And when I opened it, it was open to, I want to say, I'm sorry I didn't look this up ahead of time, but I think it was the Torah portion where I met my husband. I mean, there was something significant about it, something a little mystical, right? All right. So anyway, you can go and learn more about that from the Zohar. And then another later layer of mysticism, of course, is Rabbi Isaac Luria in the 16th century in the north of Israel in Sfat. And that's the Lurianic Kabbalah and the whole idea of tikkun olam, the breaking of the vessels and the restoration of the vessels. So that's a background. Now I'd like us to really get into some of the doctrines of the Kabbalah. And I have some more slides for that. And then make sure I give you time to talk amongst yourselves about mysticism, okay? So the first slide is about, let's see, here we go again. This first slide, oof, okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, this is, oh, it's starting to misbehave. Well, I keep getting messages that Zoom quit unexpectedly.
It's not that unexpected.
Okay, sure enough, it happened. I have delved into the mysteries and I got kicked off of Zoom. So let's try it again.
Yeah, I can see you.
Yes, I'm back. Well, I went into another dimension and I came back. But this is about the Ein Sof. What is the Ein Sof? And I just thought that was, I don't know who did that picture, but I put the website where I found it. And that is like the endless. Ein is like nothing, and Ein Sof is kind of like boundless and endless. The endlessness of God. As there's the ayin is the nothing, or I put ain, but actually I should say ayin. Ayin is the invisible and the unknown, and yesh is everything that is. So do you remember with Maimonides last week that he said we can only have negative theology. You can't talk about God. Remember that? You can't say anything about God. Even that God's kind or merciful that's the way we experience God, but there's nothing we really can say about God because God is so unique and so above us and so on. So similarly with the mystics, there's there's a slightly different approach that in God's essence, in the Godhead, as theologians would say, God is totally beyond us. We can't even comprehend. God is so different than us, and that's the ayin or the Ein Sof. And I'm going to, again, draw on the words of Rabbi Lawrence Kushner from the transcript of his talk with Krista Tippett, because he just said it so beautifully. I'll read you what he said. I think the best way to understand it is to remind you of two Hebrew words that are in Kabbalistic language, much more important than their normal definitions. The first word is yesh. So yesh. Yesh is well, he said it's hard to translate it, but it's like beingness, isness. Yesh refers to virtually everything in creation, anything that has a beginning or an end, that has spatial coordinates, that has a definition, that is bordered by other things, is part of the yesh. And he says, it's not just material reality. I mean, love has a beginning, it has an end. Beauty can have a definition, and it's not bad. It's not something to be renounced. Anybody who's tried to live in the world knows this is the world of yesh. And you and I are yesh. Okay, and he goes, et cetera, et cetera. And he turns out, he says, there's one thing that is not yesh. Can you guess what that is? It has no beginning, it has no end, and it's not bordered by anything. It has no definition. It has no spatial coordinates. You probably can't say as much about it as I'm going to try to say. It's the opposite of yesh. It's called Ein Sof, without end. Literally, it means nothing, but with a capital N. Because if I said it was something, you've got to stay with the logic here. If I said something, then you'll say, oh, well, it's next to another thing. Does this sound, it sounds just like Maimonides, right? Only a little more modern. And the Kabbalists, being serious about logic, also, they're very logical. They say, no, the only way we can talk about the non-yesh thing is to call it no thing or nothing. And that becomes Ein Sof, and that has something to do with God, the source of everything, of the yesh. So everything in the world is ultimately is made of Ein Sof, of ayin. Everything in the world is the wave of which the Ein Sof, or God, is the ocean. Okay. And it's like things emerge into being, and then they go back into the no thing again, and then they emerge in another form. It sounds a little Buddhist, doesn't it? It sounds different, right? Than we think of Jewish theology. The waves are the yesh. So the closest I can come to learning about Ein Sof and God is by talking to you or looking at a tree or planting one, he says. So that's Rabbi Lawrence Kushner on the Ein Sof and the yesh. And I think if you have any reflections, I think, let's see, put them in the chat, because I want to look now at the Sfirot that come from this Ein Sof. So, what are the Sfirot? That's a very, very important definition in Kabbalah. And I sent you a little simple article that I wrote about the Sfirot to explain them, like Sfirot 101. But when we speak of Kabbalah, we must necessarily enter the realm of myth and metaphor. And I read a wonderful definition of the Sfirot from the late Rabbi David Schenken, author of the Path of Kabbalah. So he says, imagine a power plant producing 500,000 volts of charge. The immense power of this electricity cannot be brought straight into your house without burning it down. There have to be a series of step-down points in which that big energy is distributed and reduced into smaller and smaller units till it is safe to bring it into your house. Similarly, the Ein Sof, God's endless, boundless power and holiness, the beyond, the beyond, the beyond, right? It's too much for us. And it has to have the step-down stations, and those are the Sfirot. I'll let that sink in for a little while. It's not just that there's the boundless no-thingness, and then it assumes different forms of everything and every idea and the whole universe, but there's actually kind of a flow, a system of flow, and that's the Sfirot. The chart that I put here, on my slide is also replicated in that Kabbalah 101, but in a lot more colorful form. Okay. Here, you can see many charts. So kind of wave at me if you've ever seen a chart like this before of this Sfirot. Have you seen this before or wondered what it is, or you didn't know what it is? The Sfirot, okay. So the origins of the doctrine of Sfirot are back in that ancient book, Sefer Yetzirah, this early Kabbalistic work. And by the way, the name of the new translation by Rabbi Jill Hammer is Return to the Place. That's her title, Return to the Place. On a macro level, as I just described, Sfirot are 10 emanations, you could call it flows of God into the world. And on a micro level, the Sfirot are like energy centers in our bodies and emotions. And that's how Hasidism understands it a lot. They're kind of like Jewish chakras. They're energy centers and they're in our very own bodies, like we're the microcosm, but they're also in the macrocosm. Okay, it may sound a little mystical and hard to follow, but it kind of is, because it's, it's Kabbalah, it's mysticism. But we'll try to give a simple view of it. For the Kabbalists, the tree of life is a system of divine energy. And what you're looking at a diagram of it right now. It flows from the boundlessness of Ein Sof. So those two Hebrew words at the top, if you read Hebrew, those two black words say Ein Sof. It's going to flow from there down, from the place we can't imagine down to us at the very bottom in Malchut. And the word Sfirot is similar to a Hebrew word for counting, lispor. We count 10 of them. And it's similar to a word for telling, like sipur, because each of them tells a different story. All right, I'm going to stop my share screen because I know that's so much. And I think in that Kabbalah 101, he goes even more in depth, but I think our time doesn't permit us to explore it in depth. But I want to say, what are the Sfirot in your body? So I'll give you a little demonstration, standing up here. Okay, kind of a little Jewish yoga. And if you read my article that I sent at the bottom, there's a link to a meditation that I recorded. It's really based on Reb Zalman's meditation on the Sfirot in your body. I actually do it every morning. And there are different sounds that you make. I'm not going to try to do that with you now, but maybe at another time if people are interested. Sounds that are associated with each of the Sfirot, vocalizations, and you feel the energy in your body, kind of like if you went to yoga class and I talked about the chakras, because many world esoteric traditions have these systems of energy in your body. So the top point is Keter, the crown. That's kind of the transpersonal point that connects you with the upper realms, right? And then the next points are Chokhmah and Binah, like the right and left brain, wisdom, the spark of divine creation, and Binah, understanding, which is seen as a feminine, again, a feminine side. It's like the upper mother. Oh, for the Kabbalists, there was also kind of a family, a divine family within these Sfirot. It gets to be very, very mystical in the Kabbalah and in the Zohar. By the way, Chokhmah and Binah, that's Het and Bet, and they're often paired with a kind of invisible Sfirah called Da'at. Da'at is, I would translate it as consciousness. It's often translated as knowledge, but I would say it's consciousness. So wisdom, understanding, and knowledge or consciousness, Het, Bet, and Dalet. What does that stand for, Hebrew people? Het, Bet, Dalet.
Chabad.
Chabad. So the Chabad Hasidic Jews are very interested in an intellectual approach to, at least that's the original impetus of Chabad, an intellectual approach to studying mystical sources and studying Torah. And that's, the Lubavitcher Hasidim are also called Chabad. Okay, and then the rest of the lower Sfirot are associated with the right arm, the left arm, the right leg and left leg. Sorry, I can't show you everything on my little screen. The kind of the pelvis, we'll say, and the feet and the whole body. So those are the right and left arm are chesed, kindness, the giving, the impulse to give. Gevura, the limits, judgment. They must be balanced in our heart, which is tiferet, the heart space, the glory, the beauty. Also associated by the Kabbalists with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Remember the Kadosh Baruch Hu from rabbinic literature, the Holy One of Blessing, the Holy One, blessed be He. But here, it's like the male lover in Kabbalah. There's a lot of love that happens in Kabbalah too. The right leg is netzach, endurance. If you're a go-getter, someone that keeps going and going. The left leg with hod, glory. If you're someone that likes to stop and appreciate beauty. The yesod, the generative organs, is the foundation and righteousness, which leads down to this lowest level of all, which is malchut on the chart. Okay. Again, I'm going to show you kind of looking at these. I wish I don't know if you can see like a pointer because I'm pointing with a cursor. Can you see that I'm pointing?
No.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Keter, this highest point, Chokhmah and Binah. You count that there are 10, but sometimes we count Chokhmah, Binah, and Dalet, and the Keter is kind of in a category, above us. And then, okay, so the right, left brain, if we could map these onto our body, and we can also find within them so many dimensions. They found like a kind of mystical family within them. Chesed and Gvura, the right and left hand, Tiferet, the heart, Netzach and Hod, the right and left legs, Yesod, the generative organs or pelvis, and Malchut, the feet, or kind of the whole flow into the world. This Malchut is she's our friend, the Shekhinah, who in the Zohar becomes a full-fledged character, not just the hints that we found in rabbinic literature of a feminine persona who was associated with the Holy Spirit, but in fact, she is, the goddess who's kind of come back in a way. I mean, of course, we're not calling her a goddess anymore, but she's the divine feminine, and we really would like for her to, she's been in exile because of our sins. We want to reunite her with Tiferet, her lover, and a lot of the Shabbat, all that bridal imagery on Erev Shabbat was from the Kabbalists of the north of Israel, like in 16th, 17th centuries, who were saying, this is a big divine wedding every Shabbat. We've got to get them together. And when we do a mitzvah, we have to do it for the sake of reunifying the masculine and feminine aspects of the divine. Okay, that was kind of a lot. But if you read it more in depth in that book on the Hebrew goddess and the chapters I assigned in the next chapter, you'll go into even more detail. Here's another slide. This is a picture that one of my favorite pictures that we took of the sun rising over a ridge, and it's reflected in the water below in the lake. It was in New York. And this is an important kind of principle of mysticism. I don't know. Tom, would you like to read this?
Sure.
Okay.
As above, so below. For the mystic, what happens in our world is a reflection of processes in realms beyond. And for some forms of Kabbalah, what we do here in our world can affect the inner life of God, reuniting the Shekhinah, Malchut, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Tiferet.
Okay, so.
Nice photo.
Thank you. So, well, I don't know, like, do you have any questions? Or are you like, I don't even know what to ask, or like the child of the Seder, like, I don't know what to ask.
Can I mean, it
Yes.
just, what I would say, it seems to me, this subject is so massive.
Yeah.
And so deep. It presents itself as so much at the surface, and yet is so deep that I think all that one can do in a session like this, and all the more a Zoom session, is point at it.
Yeah.
And and say, here is something, and if it feels to you like something to step into a little bit,
Yeah.
step into it. And anybody who wants, I mean, I'm not making any, you see any divine things going around me? No.
I actually do. We actually do, Tom.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Don't. Yeah. I've read a lot of the literature. If anybody wants some suggestions of books to read or whatever, or just whatever, feel free to be in touch with me. But don't. I'm not. There is no such thing as an expert.
Right.
That's all I can say. I mean, to me, I guess in a way, the book that's most influenced me is, and that goes without saying that I can't reach for it, and yes, I can. Yes, I can. Is, and I recommend it to all of you. The 13 Petal Rose
of Dean Steinsaltz, yeah.
by Aidan Steinsaltz. Aidan Steinsaltz is the great, perhaps the great of our time, as a Jewish thinker.
The 13 Petal Rose of Dean Steinsaltz. And Ellen said when she was teaching yoga, there was an Aleph Bet yoga book that she used as a guide. Yes. And so
it's a beautiful
embodiment.
Book. But it's a mystical book. It's a I mean, it's not something where you're gonna, and on the first petal there's this, and on the second, no, it is indefinite. About the 25,000 worlds that coexist, one could say.
Okay. Yeah. So Dean Steinsaltz and even more recently, like Jill Hammer, Rabbi Jill Hammer's books, Rabbi Lawrence Kushner. These are people that brought,
Absolutely.
again, popularized some of the ideas. Or if you listen to some of the classes by Daniel Matt or Reb Zalman's teachings too, what I like to do is, if I could say the question I ask is kind of like, well, what does this, he's got another one there, okay.
I mean,
But it's right
anything
in
by,
the chat,
anything by this guy, anything by Gershom Scholem.
Okay, but
It's-
you know, the Gershom Scholem things will be a little more academic. So if people want to go on that route, they can. And Moshe Idel, IDEL, one of his top students, has published a lot. There's
Yes,
many
I
books.
read this book too.
So one of the questions I ask is like, what does this, well, I'm like the wicked child of the Seder, I guess. Like, what does this mean to you?
You keep changing which one you are.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm kind of like, well, you know what the Kabbalists and the Hasidim said, it's really the opposite of what we think, by the way, with the 4 children. Since we're getting close to Passover, you know, we think the wise child is all good, and then there's the wicked one, and then there's kind of a simple one, and the one that doesn't even know how to ask. But for the Kabbalists, it's like, well, that wise child was really the simple one. The wise child is just like, tell me what to do. What are the rules? That's the exoteric Judaism. That's what, and there are people for whom that is, in fact, very satisfying. And that's kind of mainstream Judaism. But then you get to that wicked child, so-called wicked rebel, really is like, what does this mean? What's the point of all this? Right? So they are really at a higher level. And the one who is the simple child who's like, what is this? Is one who's already getting a more holistic, mystical view. They're entering higher realms. And the one who doesn't know how to ask has already gone beyond words into those ineffable realms. And they are really at the highest level of all. So don't think it's just like the simple story that we all know. So what I like to ask like that so-called wicked child is, what does this mean to us personally? Because I know some people that are really into Kabbalah, some Jewish renewal people, you know, and heavy duty Kabbalah and studying it. But for me, it's a little more Hasidic and what people call neo-Hasidic. So as I said again, Hasidism is this kind of the mysticism for the masses, the psychological side of mysticism and Kabbalah that is popularized in certain Jewish traditional circles. Gabrielle says, phew, she doesn't even know how to ask right. In certain traditional circles that became very traditional, they were once counterculture, they're now very, very orthodox. But neo-Hasidism is like Jewish renewal. You could say Jewish renewal, which is where Rabbi Beth studied and I studied, you know, with the Aleph Alliance for Jewish Renewal is a thing you can look up. So there's a lot of interest in mysticism, but for me, it's always about, well, what does it mean to me in beyond, you know, having mystical experiences? Like how can it help you to feel closer to God, feel spirituality, help to serve others, and so on. And really, even the Sfirot, this idea of the Sfirot is something that the Hasidim and like Neo-Hasidism looks at in a practical way. For example, between Passover and Shavuot, there's 7 weeks. 7's always the number. The lower 7 Sfirot, the ones that are not the ones up in our head, with Chachma, Bina, and Dat, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, but the ones that are like the ches, the kindness and the restraint, the power and the love and all those things. Each week between Passover and Shavuot, and each day of the week, we explore a different dimension of those emotionally and work on ourselves to be a better person. And likewise, we can do that as we get ready for the high holidays. We can do that as we carry the Torah around 7 times on Simchat Torah. We think of those different Sfirot and we kind of embody them. And I try to bring this into some of the things that I teach about in the synagogue, right? It's like mysticism made easy a little bit. They can have meaning for us, and therefore I just like to think of myself as a garden variety mystic, you know. All right, so what I'd like to do now is to give you a chance to the breakout rooms. I said before A, well, it's just after A little bit. I'd like to put you in breakout rooms, and the question I would encourage you to explore is, have you had a mystical experience, something you would call a mystical experience, or at least an unexplained experience, an experience that's hard to put into words? And is there a way you could hold that, writing it down, creating a ritual, or is there something when you're in you can talk about anything else related though to Kabbalah and mysticism, and if it has any role in your theology, or if you're more of that rationalist like we talked about last week. So I'd like to give you like 10 minutes to go in breakout rooms and talk about this. But what I did is I will stay in the room. If you don't want to go in your room, I was kind of alerted to this. Zoom puts you in the room and randomly assigns the room. And if it assigned you a room where you don't want to be, you could just hang out with me and we can talk, because I'll still be in the room, and I'll turn off the recording button. And you can, if you feel awkward, just stick around with me and we can talk. Okay, but I hope you will stay, because we'd like to stay till 8:30 and cover a couple of other things. So now I'm going to create these breakout rooms. Okay, and we're going to put, all right, I'm going to put 4 in a breakout room. That's maybe more is better, but let's try that. And you're going to go and be there for like 10 minutes. Okay, sound good? Give each person a good long time to talk. All right, here we go. If you don't want to be in your room, just stay with me in this room. Okay, bye. Hello.
I thought we'd stay with you.
You gonna stay with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know what
Okay.
to ask.
Well, I'm gonna pause the recording. Let me pause. Oh, okay. Well, I'd like to take a few minutes to see if people want to share anything that you don't have to share everything you share in your group, but if there was something you want to think the whole class would benefit from hearing, feel free to share that. Or Gabrielle?
I shared that right brain and left brain don't always help being able to verbalize what is a mystical experience.
Well, the left brain is supposed to be the more verbal one, right? And the right brain is just experiencing it holistically. I mean, that's what, I am not a doctor. I'm just
No,
this
I
kind
mean,
of
that's
simplified
exactly
version I
correct.
read.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. That's what I was sharing.
Okay.
In my group, we had a common theme, a common thread through the group, a lot of struggling with what is a mystical experience or a spiritual experience. But everybody came up with something about death, about
Yeah.
loved ones dying, or premonitions of it, or reappearance of and the like. So that's mystery, which is the mystery, and that fits into the same sort of lexicon as the mystics, where there's no light between on the edges there, in the liminal edges. You just can't get through. It's all one, divine and profane, real. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jimenez and us.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. We were talking about out-of-body experiences, and sometimes voluntarily and sometimes not, and
Oh,
sort of near death too, but
Mhm.
but we were relating to that same thing.
Mhm.
thank you. I was gonna say, apropos what George said, that Ben, hold on, make sure I got my Kabbalist right. That Ben Azai, the one who they said went, that he kind of, according to this tractate Hagiga, like went a little crazy from this mystical experience. All right, wait a minute. Yeah.
Oh, Ben Azai is in, sayings.
Oh, Ben Zoma, sorry. Ben Azai died, but Ben Zoma was, okay. Ben Zoma, that he was gazing and trying to see where the upper waters and the lower waters, where they met, or that there's really nothing. They're just like nesting cups almost. That's what the Talmud said. They're just like touching, and you can't, it just, your language reminded me of that. Yeah. Thank you. Well, all of these, it sounds like a lot of people were thinking of experiences that are on the verge of our consciousness or taking us beyond, our everyday experience, and sometimes mystical things happen then at those moments, right? Sometimes you looked for them, sometimes you didn't. Marilyn, did you want to say something? Anybody else? Okay. Deborah.
Yeah, what we discussed also, I think a lot of it was sort of the experience that we have of this continuing sense of connection with people that we've loved who passed, right? And there's that mystical transcendent experience. But we closed with, I thought, the conversation led to a very interesting place, which is this sort of the mystical, miraculous experience. So from the time you're born to the time you die, you take in and you release breath. Just the act of breathing is in itself such an intensely miraculous experience. The fact that the body breathes in, breathes out, breathes in, breathes out, and does it for years and years and years and
the
years.
heart beats on.
And the heart beats on. That's really, when you think about it, it's almost like a little mind-blowing.
And also the idea that if you look at you when you were 2 years old and you when you were 20 years old and you now, is that the same person? Actually, every cell has been replaced so many times, right? And you're totally different experiences, and yet there's some part of you, the consciousness, the witness, that's there all the time. And just thinking about ourselves and how we got to be here is one of the most mind-blowing things we could do, right?
Right.
And I feel now you're making me think of all different things. We could have a whole class on Kabbalah, I guess a whole class, like the neshama, the soul in Kabbalah. They talk about all these ideas of the soul, the different levels of the soul, like 5 different levels of the soul, and also of reincarnation, since people were talking about like death and what happens in the worlds to come and the soul's journey. And my friend Rabbi Simcha Raphael, who came from my installation service, with his wife Rabbi Razel, he wrote this book on Jewish views of the afterlife. And in Kabbalah, there's definitely views of reincarnation, very interesting things like that. So I wanted to just, in the few minutes we had left, although we don't have time to go in depth, I did think it was important, because this was in your chapter, to share a little bit about the Lurianic Kabbalah. But if you came to my class on Tikkun Olam, which unfortunately only one class I think really got recorded because of Zoom issues, but oh yes, and I'm about to have another Zoom issue. No, don't kick me out, Zoom. It's starting to do things again. It's telling me Zoom is quitting, but is it quitting?
No.
No.
You can see the picture. We can see the
It's gone
power.
away.
And also,
Be back.
Uh,
Uh-oh.
no,
There
no.
she is.
Zoom should give me a refund or something, really. Like what's the deal with it? Okay, but here we go. All right, so if you went to the Ari synagogue in Tzfat, you can read about Isaac Luria in your chapter, 16th century Tzfat, a great Kabbalist who, as a teenager, in a little hut on the banks of the Nile River while they briefly went to Egypt, he had this vision of basically the Big Bang. And this idea that this Ein Sof, this endless boundlessness of God, that creation took place within God.
Yes.
It's not outside of God, but within God, that God created this space that's called Tzimtzum. So I gave you some of the definitions here. We did this in another class on Tikkun Olam. There's the boundlessness. God makes a little Tzimtzum. God kind of contracts to make a little womb space kind of for the whole universe to exist. Then God sends some of the light back into this to create, those are those vessels. But on the first go, they break. The divine light is too powerful, leaving kind of broken pieces of divinity everywhere in the world in like shards of material reality, in all of its forms. And so those are the klipot, or like the material husks, or the source of evil. And in those are the nitzots, the divine spark. And we go around, another way that we influence God, so to speak, is that we help pick up the sparks and put them back together. That, of course, Luria had a kind of mystical idea of this, But we, today with the idea of tikkun olam, we think of it kind of in a social way, or that when we see brokenness in the world, if we try to raise up those sparks, we can become partners with God. And so this whole idea of tikkun olam goes back to, of course, it goes way back beyond Kabbalah, but definitely it really flowered a lot in Kabbalah, and that influenced a lot of the idea of tikkun olam as we have today. Michelle, you were.
Yes, I've always been a little bothered by that vision or understanding, because it suggests that the creation process was less than perfect.
Yeah.
And that doesn't jive with, I don't know, my concept of God as a creator.
Well, what about what you see around you? Is what you see around you perfect?
No, but how is it that God could create vessels that were unable to accomplish their mission?
Well, it's
so that
who am I to
suggests
say?
that's
I mean, the explanation is that.
so you're looking at it from the bottom up. I'm looking at it from the top down. Do you understand what I mean?
Right. Well,
No.
okay, well, one Kabbalist, sorry, I don't have this source at my fingertips, but one Kabbalist explained it like seeds that break open. You can't grow, you the gardeners with us, right? The seeds must break for the flowers to bloom. And there had to be some kind of breaking for growth to happen, for the world to take place. If it remained in a perfect stasis with the perfection of God, there would be no room for anything else, including us and the entire universe. So it was kind of a necessary breakage. Now, of course, the Kabbalistic myth gets super, complicated, and they give all kinds of reasons for that. Dr. Lawrence Fine said that if you continue the myth in its very complex full version, the vessels reconfigure, they begin to rise in holiness. And Adam in the book of Genesis had the chance to bring the world back to full spiritual perfection, but then it would be like just all God again. But instead he sinned, he pulled that fruit from the tree, which was Malchut, the Shekhinah separated her from everything else. And that's the world we're in today. But I think, look, I don't try to take this literally. I once asked a different Kushner, Rabbi Harold Kushner, the great author of When Bad Things Happen to Good People, who's a wonderful rabbi in Mensch. I got to interview him once for a Jewish paper, and said, when I think about the things that happen in the world, kind of and when I read these things in Kabbalah, that the world is broken to start with and we need to help repair it, that speaks to me a lot. And he said it speaks to him a lot too. And that he was at one point a rationalist, an Orthodox Kaplanist, he said, like a real Reconstructionist Jew, but he was more drawn to mysticism, not because he literally believes in Lurianic Kabbalah, but because he sees it as the most compelling metaphor to describe the condition that we're in and the way that we can work to perfect our world. But it's a different way of seeing creation. So all these same big questions that we've been asking since the Bible: why the bad things happen? What happens after you die? What are you doing here on this earth anyway? Who is God? How do you experience God? How do you encounter God? We've seen it in so many ways through the centuries. And I hope this will just be the beginning, and that we're going to get to learn together in the future. And so we say in Hebrew, when you finish doing it like a unit of study, like a tract of a Talmud, you say Hadran alach in Aramaic, Hadran alach, the Hadrach alan. May we will return to learn this again, and may it return to us to learn with us again. And I hope that we will be giving you a evaluation form, so you can say how great it was. Just kidding. You can give some feedback, you give some ideas, but I also want to give feedback on the format. I mean, I'll say, doing this as a seminar for like 5 weeks, it's been a challenge, I'm sure, to all of us, including the teacher. And I wonder if we should do it like once a month throughout the year or something like that. I'd like to get some feedback on people's ideas. Or would people like to do something in person? Or something informal?
Twice a week.
Twice a week. Or do you want to keep, what do you want to, well, just to see what kind of formats you might want to have and what subjects. But I hope we'll study some more things about more modern Jewish thought, like from Spinoza on up to the modern thinkers. So with that, I'm gonna Hold on.
If we're voting, I've heard one once a month and I'll second that.
You like it one time? Well, I'm just gonna stop the recording and just say, thanks for everyone who's listening. I'm gonna close this recording.